Hi there, this is Steve. I'm here with a walkthrough of a data request management tool that I created using Airtable. You can customize this however you see fit. It's just an approach that I have used and I think is very helpful so that you always stay on top of your data requests. I've created both what they call a registry and a log. At least how I define a registry is every data request that's made should be essentially added as a record. And then you have individual tables that will be the responses to each of those data requests. So, for example, here we have a table that says Discovery Request Registry. And I have down here the first name of the first data request, which was a data request number 1 from the Illinois Commerce Commission. I have a field here that automatically logs the date that this request was put into it as a record, the name of the person logging the request, which is another field, and it's a drop-down menu, and you can put whatever names, of course, you want in there. A copy of the document, which is an attachment, a document date for when what the date of the document was, and the document name. You will also then have a field here for the requesting party, which can be a drop-down menu with various options. And then what kind of a request is this? This may be a data request, which is, I don't say, a relatively benign term for general information that they're seeking. And then, for example, in this other logged discovery request, you have a first set of interrogatories, a much more formal legal request that requires in the responses a sworn statement. You then have in another field here the number of days that you've been given in which to respond. And this will calculate based on the log date what the date would be that the due date is. And this is very helpful to make sure you stay on time and on schedule. I have a field here for any notes that may be relevant. And then I also have these other fields here which relate to the year and month in which the requests are received. They will automatically be calculated based on your date that you've logged it, and it will be used in another view where you can look at requests that have come in based on year and month, and it gives you kind of an idea of the activity that you're receiving in terms of the regulators, and to see if you're being heavily loaded with discovery requests. Now, that's just the registry for the particular requests made. What you would then do is, based on the name of the discovery request, you create another table, and this would be the log. And that would be the log of those particular discovery requests. So here you see, as you scroll down, the data request number. So they've used the terminology of ICC 1.01. You would have a field which would be, again, drop down, which would be open or closed with respect to whether the request has been fully answered, the requesting entity, staff, and then who that request is assigned to. So, you may have a one person like the Director of Regulatory Affairs managing the compilation, but this may be assigned, let's say, based on the question, to someone in the accounting department, which is, in this case here, you see that the department, which is another drop-down menu, would indicate the department. So John Brown would be in the accounting department. John Brown would be responding on behalf of the accounting department. And the column over here would have a copy of the full data request made in that one record. I have a field here for data request notes, just internal notes for people to say, hey, this is got some issues or what we need to be able to produce. And then in response, in preparing this response, you would have a field for supporting documentation, which would be drop down, or an attachment field, a draft written response that you can be drafted in here in terms of how you're going to respond to that particular request, and then a final written response based on any edits that anybody else has made to the draft written response. You check here if the response is completed, so we can track what's done and what's not done. And then we have approvers. And here these would be a list of people who were responsible for approving the final draft response and the documentation. That often might be the Director of Regulatory Affairs, it might be the General Counsel, it may be several people, several officers in the company. And we would acknowledge whether the sign-off is made by the approvers and the date the final submission was submitted and filed. So we can track all of that information to show that we are on top of our game and making sure that everything is filed. This particular view of the log is a main view, but you can create various views down here. You'll see form, calendar, gallery, Kanban, and you can create grid views and then sort and group and filter to your heart's content to look at only certain things. So, for example, you might want to look at only issues that are open versus closed, how much are done. You want to maybe look at which are the ones that are going to be due in 3 days. You maybe want to do a Kanban view, which would basically show, the ones that are open and which that are closed, and you can move them, in a sort of visual sort of way from open to the closed file. So this is all, there's different variations of what you could do here. All are good. And then for each successive request that you have, you just create a new table and you duplicate the table. You basically drop down here and you can say duplicate table, and essentially all of the fields would get copied without the content, and you can create a new table for a new data request. This approach that I've done here allows you to keep all of the data requests in notified in the first table of what all of them that have been received, and then you have right close by individual tables for each request, and you can track it, and it's all very condensed into one database. Now, another approach that you might want to take is simply for each data request, create a whole new database, which is fine. I think this is a little bit easier if you've got relatively few requests and you just want to keep all this information together so that easier to access the information and see how you're doing. Over here you have blocks, and in the blocks you have a block that has a description of what this tool does, and then you, for example, would say, on a particular table, what's the completion rate on a particular request? Is 50% of the questions done, and that you can track that, and your management may want to do that. Same thing with the pivot table that talk about open and closed, and then you can even create an alarm so that if you pass the 3-day mark before they were due and you're running up against the deadline, this alarm will go off and let people know that you're getting close to the deadline. You need to get this thing done. One of the things I love about Airtable is that you do have this share button, and you can click it. You can create shares of blocks over here for management. You can share various tables, and then you can actually share the whole database if you want to limiting the ability to actually making it only read only, so they can't change the data itself. What I find helpful with that is that rather than spending the time, for example, creating a PowerPoint presentation that you're going to have to present in some meeting to talk about the status of these data requests, I think it's just as easy to create a view with the blocks that are there, the summaries, and send that to management so that they can look at it in advance. And frankly, you can cast this on a view from your computer or laptop onto a screen and discuss the status of all of these questions and issues without having to prepare an entirely new document. Everything can be examined in real time, and changes made or suggestions made about language about the request response and things like that, and all condensed in one spot. Again, one workplace. You don't want to keep spreading this out into different Office platforms. You don't want to have something in an email and a PowerPoint and an Excel spreadsheet and sitting in some folder, because there's a lack of cohesiveness and consistency when you do that, and the inability to easily transfer that information to a successor person who's responsible for this. The beauty of this is that if something happened and someone had to take over the management of this, everything would be there and it'd be fairly intuitive. They wouldn't be having to go scouring through others' folders within the Windows system. They don't have to go through emails to find things. They don't have to worry about whether something is labeled a certain name and try to do a search to find it. It's all collective in one workplace, and the integrity of it's kept. Now, one other thing that's really important too is that a great feature, but it's not often discussed, is that as you change information in a record, that is recorded. And so it's all auditable. So if someone's made a change to a response, it will indicate who made the change, when they made it, and what the change was. And that could be a very valuable tool if there's miscommunications in the future and something gets filed that someone's like, who made that change? Well, now you'll know. So I hope this is a valuable tool to you. I know it's made my life immeasurably easier, and it gives me truly the cliche ability to sleep at night, because I know everything is being managed in a very tight way and nothing's going to fall between the cracks. So I hope you find this tool useful. I have more for you. Just check my other videos and check my blog for the latest updates on things to make your life easier, because that's what Retail Energy Winter is all about.